Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you a video on how to cut and sew an off-shoulder dress with a ruffle sleeve. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So here's my front pattern, and I went ahead to add ½ inch all around it apart from the side. So I'm using the same fabric for my lining and for the dress, and I'll just go ahead to open this up. So I'll be using the lining to turn this up. So, and if you notice, my lining has a joining at the center. I just went ahead to join it, and now I'm going to place this and I'll stitch up the sides, leave the armhole, stitch up the sweetheart neckline and stitch up the sides. So after I was done stitching, I'll just go ahead and give it a good notch. So to notch it is to make it relax more, or you can just go ahead and stitch up the upper part, top stitch the ½ inch to the lining before stitching up the side. So you have like two options to do this. So after notching this, after I'm done notching this, I'll just go ahead and turn it to the right side. So after I'm done turning this to the right side, I'll just go ahead and fold it this way. Now I want to go ahead to mark my dart, and to mark my dart, I'll go ahead and mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5 inches. And after marking that, I'll also repeat this at the other side. I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5 inches. So after that, I'll go back to my pattern paper and I'll measure the length of the dart I have, which is about 5 inches, and I'll add ½ inch to it because of we added ½ inch at the lower part. So the length of the dart will be 5.5. So I'll go ahead and mark ½ inch on both sides and also mark on the other side of the pattern, and I'll go ahead to connect this. So after doing for this part, I'll also go ahead to repeat the same process at the other side of my pattern. I'll go ahead and measure the 5.5 inches for the dart intake. And I'll go ahead and mark ½ inch on both sides, and I will extend it all the way up and also repeat that at the other side. So I'll just go ahead and stitch up my dart, and this is what I have. So now here is the front pattern. I have it on fold, that is for the lower part, and I cut it on fold just like I said, and I doubled it together. So I don't want to have much joining at the front. So what I'm going to do right now is to go ahead to notch the center, and I'll place this and I'll be stitching with ½ inch. So after I'm done stitching with ½ inch, I'm going to go ahead to place this way and top stitch. So at first I wanted to top stitch it, but I decided to like sew it inside out. So I'll also be showing you that later. But after that, I went ahead to stitch up the side, that is to top stitch the side. So this is what I have after I'm done top stitching it. So the next step I'm going to take now is to go ahead to work on the back pattern. So looking at my back pattern, you notice that my pattern is a bit shorter than the main fabric. On the fabric, I noticed that what I cut out was a bit too short, so I added 1 inch extra to my pattern before adding ½ inch to it. So I'll just go ahead and stitch with ½ inch on the side, on the upper part, and the side of the dress also. So after I'm done stitching, this is what I have. I'll just go ahead and also mark my dart for the back pattern. And to do that, I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch first for the zipper allowance. And after marking that, I'll also repeat it at the other side of my pattern. I'll just go ahead and mark 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So from that 1 inch zipper allowance, I'll be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is that same 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark it on this side, then measure the 5.5 inches darts, and I will mark ½ inch on both sides for the darts, and I will extend it all the way up, and also repeat the same process at the other side. Mark ½ inch on both sides, and I will also extend it up this way and go ahead to sew my dart. So after I'm done sewing the dart for the back, I'm going to also bring the lower part of the back pattern, which I also cut on fold. So I'll notch the part that is going to the zipper, before I misplace it. And now I'll just go ahead and place it on it. So When I was actually sewing the front pattern, I top stitched on it, but later on I loosened it and I sewed it inside out. So I'll be showing you how I did that for this pattern. So I'll just go ahead and pin this down. After pinning this down, I'm going to flip the fabric inside it this way, and I'm going to use this to close it, and then that initial ½ inch I pinned with, I'll go ahead and repin it, and after I'm done repinning it, I'm going to be stitching on it with ½ inch, and after that I'll take out the fabric from it, and then I'll just fold the lower parts and top stitch just like we did for the front. So this is the top stitch by the side, and I'm done sewing the back pattern. So for the back pattern, I'm going to go ahead and measure my nipple to nipple divided by 2 immediately after that zipper line, and I'll still go ahead and mark that 1.5 inches I marked in front, and I'll go down by 1 inch or 1.5 for the armhole for the back, and I'll go ahead to connect. So after I'm done cutting this out, I'm going to place it on the fabric on the front part of this pattern. So because I added 1 inch at the upper part of my back, I'm just going to go ahead to retrace the armhole I have for the front pattern of this dress to make sure that it matches what I have at the armhole at the back this way. So I'm just going to go ahead to place, and I'll just connect it upwards this way. So this is what I have for the back, and the next step is to go ahead to cut out my sleeve. So for the sleeve pattern, this is what I cut out. So I cut out 2 pieces on each side. So I'll go ahead to sew the upper part, the side, and the lower part of my sleeve. So after I was done sewing that, this is what I have. So I'm just going to go ahead to attach this to my dress, and I'll be using ½ inch to attach it. So I'm going to place the back with the back side of the sleeve, and I will stitch with ½ inch, and I will join it on the other side after I'm done stitching. So I'll also go ahead and take this, and I'll be stitching it with ½ inch, and this stitching you're doing is going to be on the wrong side of your fabric. So you're going to place, and you're going to be stitching with ½ inch, and you're also going to repeat this at the other side of your pattern this way. So after I'm done attaching, this is what I have. So I went ahead to pin the sides, and I'm going to be marking 1 inch on both sides of my pattern because I added 1.5 inch sewing allowance. So by the time I turned it up with ½ inch, I'm left with 1 inch on both sides. So I'll just go ahead and mark 1 inch to the end of my pattern, and I'm also going to repeat this at the other side. So if you're not sure that you shaped out ½ inch from your pattern, go ahead and just place your measurement. So while marking this, going to the sleeve part, I'm just going to extend it, and then to make sure I'm correct at that part, I'll place my tape and mark what I have. That is my round sleeve measurement is 12 divided by 2. I have 6, and I went ahead to mark that. On this other side, I'll go ahead also to repeat the same process. I'll just go ahead and place my tape, and I'll measure that same 6 inches here, and I'll just go ahead to connect it down to my sleeve. So after this, I'll just go ahead to stitch up my dress, and we'll be working on the ruffle. So for the ruffle, I use 20 inches. On fold, what I have is 10. So I'm just going to go ahead to stitch this up with ½ inch, but the total length of my ruffle is 49, which was total length of the fabric I made the ruffle with was 49, but it wasn't really enough. At first I thought it was going to be okay. So if you're working with yours, you make sure it's up to 60 or 70 because you're going to sew a gather stitch on your fabric later. So I went ahead to stitch it up with ½ inch, and I top stitched the end of my fabric this way. So now I'm going to sew a gather stitch slightly at the middle of this dress, and also at the lower part you can go ahead and shape it out, but I left mine that way and I ended up folding it in on the dress. So here is my ruffle after I was done sewing it. So I'm just going to go ahead to attach it to the dress. So while placing it, I started at the mid part of my blouse. So my neckline was not that deep, just like we have on the thumbnail. I wanted mine to be a bit high, and now from the middle part I folded up my ruffle this way, and you're going to pin it down before going ahead to sew it. And you're actually going to sew it on that same line that you gathered your ruffle. So I'll just go ahead to pin it, and then pin it to the sleeve of my dress this way. And then some part of the sleeve I had to go ahead to use my needle and thread to just stitch it up to create more ruffle effect on it. So just like I said, my ruffle was not really enough. I thought 49 inches was going to go round, but it did not. So I just stopped at the back of my sleeve. So here I'm just going to go ahead to use my pin to hold it down this way, and I'll be using a needle and thread to tack it after I'm done stitching on my gathers on the ruffle line. I'll just use my needle and thread to tack some parts of my dress. So I'll just go ahead and do this, and also repeat this at the other side of my dress. So after I was done attaching my ruffles, I went ahead to attach zipper at the back of the dress, and this is what I had after I was done. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial.